Welcome to Forbidden Plant TV. I'm Andrew Sumner, and today we've got a returning regular guest, Mr. Garth Ennis. How are you, mate?
Pretty good, Andrew. How about you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you, mate. I'm good. Now, you're here with us to talk about your new Peacemaker book from DC. What can you tell us about it, mate?
Well, Peacemaker came out of a conversation I had with DC's editor-in-chief, Marie Javins. Um, I'd always thought that with a bit of work and not much, DC could have their own Punisher there. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a great name for a gun, great name for a character. Um, but beyond that, you have this slightly harder edged character than your run of the mill superheroes. Also, I believe he doesn't actually have superpowers. And I thought that by sort of jettisoning the oddball red, white, and blue costume with the silver bucket on his head
yeah,
and using that name and doing harder edged, maybe crime based stories, you might have something interesting. And it's just one of those ideas I have that won't really go away. And then, opportunity comes up and you find a window in your schedule. And I found myself writing this book. And uh, we've got Garry Brown doing the art. And it's a story of really the Peacemaker before he became the Peacemaker as we know him. So it's a 38 pager. I believe it'll be out early next year to coincide with a lot of the kind of Suicide Squad stuff.
yeah. I guess the follow release stuff on Suicide Squad and whatnot. So, is it? What's the title of the book?
I believe it's called Disturbing the Peace.
Yeah,
It is, as I say, it's a one shot. What it's essentially about is it going with that, Punisher esque idea. If DC had a Punisher, I started to think about what if you had a character like that, a sort of vigilante justice aficionado who was still in the military, who wasn't like Marvel's Punisher, where he's now in civilian life and he fights a one man war on crime. What if you had a guy who did the same thing but was still in the military and he solved maybe the army, that the problems that the army and the Marines and the Navy and the Air Force have, uh, but in a very final Punisher like way. And so what we have is we have the character sitting with a psychiatrist actually in a graveyard. Uh, and she's very gently probing him about some of the stuff that he's been up to because she has put the clues together and discovered what this guy is. Thing is, she doesn't know the half of it. She thinks that she's found this sort of weird maverick kind of a guy who's a one man operation. She's wrong about that, as she's going to find out. But Christopher Smith, the Peacemaker, he sort of gently leads her through the highways and byways of his life and demonstrates to her that actually what she thought was a one man operation is something else entirely. And of course, by the time she finds out the truth, she's really in too deep. So it's really going through 30 or 40 years of the man's life, from the moment he started to get these odd ideas about making peace in the particularly final way that he does it, through his teenage years and then into his military service. And she has to sit there aghast as she finds out the full story.
yeah. I love it, mate. It's a character I've always been fascinated with for some of the reasons that you say, and just because the central conceit of the character is just so amusing. The whole "I would kill for peace" thing. That's
Right,
how much I love it.
right.
I've always liked that. Are you familiar at all with the original run?
I've seen bits and pieces throughout the years. I think I may have encountered the character maybe 30 or 40 years ago, back when I first started reading DC titles. Um, Most obviously Swamp Thing, but you always saw the ads, for
Yeah,
other titles. I think he was in Suicide Squad around that time, and of course, I think it's generally known that as the Peacemaker, he was the model for the comedian. in
Yeah,
Watchmen.
absolutely.
Now he of course is a very different kind of character. He's someone, the comedian is someone that the military use really to solve exterior problems, and of course that the political establishment uses for the same kind of missions. And the comedian, of course, does things very much on his own terms. But I suppose that is really where I first encountered the Peacemaker. So it's not really a question of having read his previous adventures as just finding something interesting about the character and thinking this is a character who, with a few tweaks, could be made to suit me quite well.
Yeah, which makes complete sense to me. I
Mm.
mean, I think one of the things that's interesting about the original run, one the most interesting really is where outside of the central conceit of the character, is where the artist Pat Boyette got the inspiration for that helmet. I just would
Mhm.
love to know where he was coming from, where he came when it came up with that design.
Well, I can tell you that one of the questions that will not be answered in this book is where the original design for the helmet came from, because, as I say, this is very much the Peacemaker before he became the
Yeah,
Peacemaker that we know of. This is a guy, as I say, he's sort of solving criminal problems within the military, because the military is a society in microcosm, just like our larger society that it exists within, and it has its own problems, and it has crime, and it has wrongdoing, and sometimes those problems have to be solved in, as I say, a final way, but also maybe a discreet way too,
yeah.
and that's where the Peacemaker comes in.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, my last point about the helmet would be that at the time that was quite a controversial design, even back then in the late '60s. The
Mhm.
final issue of the original run, which I think is issue 5, Pat Boyette decided to amend the helmet design, and so he flipped it around so that bucket kind of wing becomes
Mhm.
a kind of fin instead, and it looks even stranger that way. So it was a tweak that, like, the book then got cancelled, but
Ah.
yeah,
Well,
it's
it's not a creative loose end I intend to pick up on.
I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. Now, obviously, like DC and Warner Brothers are really doubling down on the character because
Mhm.
he's got his HBO Max series coming up next year, which no doubt
Mhm.
this book ties into the run up towards. Um, if it went down well, are you up for doing more of them?
Possibly. As usual with these kinds of characters, like my recent Batman story with Liam, uh, like what I've done on the Punisher for Marvel and Nick Fury too, it would be a question of being able to do it on my own terms. I'm not really the guy you call when you want something that ties in heavily to a TV show or existing continuity. If I was able to pursue my own particular instincts on the character and explore this idea of a, a Punisher within the army, a Punisher on active service, then maybe I might be able to do more.
Yeah, right on. Well, I hope you get the chance because I think that's an intriguing concept.
Hmm.
I'm looking forward to reading the book, mate. And that is The Peacemaker #1, one-off edition, Disturbing the Peace, which everyone watching this can order from the links attached to the conversation. It's always good to see you, mate. I'll see you again soon. Thank you.
All right. Cheers, Andrew.
If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.